Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm Papa Boris, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to play Splendor, which is, if you don't know, a strategy board game. This is a game I've actually had for quite a while. I don't know why I haven't made a video for it, but here we go. One reason why I wanted to make videos for this game is that a lot of board games claim to span that divide between really hardcore strategy board gamers and people who are more on the fence about strategy board games or do like board games but only the lighter ones. And Splendor, in my opinion, is one of the few games that actually lives up to that billing, where it is challenging enough, deep enough, and has a high enough skill cap that really serious board gamers can enjoy this game a lot and analyze quite a bit of it. There's a lot of room for improving your strategy. At the same time, the rules don't take so long to explain, and the game mechanics are not so complicated with like a zillion things to think about, that people who are less inclined toward the really hardcore strategy board games can still learn this game easily enough and play it and be competitive. Now let's go ahead and explain the rules. Note that my goal in this video is to teach you how to play the game, the physical board game, but if you are curious, the app I am using is the Steam version. The same app is also available on mobile, and in my opinion, it is a top-notch app. Now let's talk about the setup, just really briefly so you know technically what's going on. You can play this game with 2, 3, or 4 players. In a 2-player game, you have 3 nobles and 4 tokens of each color, which you'll see matters substantially. In a 3-player game, you have 4 nobles and 5 tokens of each color. And in a 4-player game, you're going to have 5 nobles and 7 tokens of each color. So the nobles increase, depending on the players, 3, 4, 5, and the tokens increase 4, 5, and then there's a jump to 7. The number of gold tokens is always the same, and the number of prestige points necessary to trigger the endgame is always the same, but the nobles and the tokens change. You'll see in a moment why that matters. Okay, now let's talk about the actual setup of the game. There are 3 different decks of cards: blue, yellow, and green. You can also call them top tier, middle tier, and bottom tier. At the beginning of the game, you shuffle all 3 of these decks, and then you lay out 4 cards of each type. Probably you'll want to do it the way it's done here on the screen, though technically you can do whatever you want. You'd have a top row consisting of 4 cards from the top deck, a middle row consisting of 4 cards from the middle deck, and then a bottom row consisting of 4 cards from the bottom deck. Now, on your turn, you can do one of 4 different things. One of the 4 things you can do is take 3 different colored gems. There are 5 different colors of gems. Thematically, these are actual gemstones: onyx, ruby, emerald, sapphire, and diamond. I'm probably just going to call them by their colors. So here I'll take a red one, a black one, and a blue one. I'm not necessarily playing for strategy here, just making some moves to show you the game works. So that's it. One nice thing about the game is that all 4 things you can do are pretty quick. So you do that thing, your turn ends, and even in a 4-player game, the game moves along pretty rapidly, unless of course you have someone who's paralyzed by analysis. Okay, so the second thing that you can do is take 2 gems, but if you take 2 gems of the same color, they have to come from a stack with at least 4 gems in it. So you can take 3 gems of different colors, or 2 gems of the same color, but like in this situation, I could not take 2 black gems, or 2 red gems, or 2 blue ones, or 2 white ones. The only gem I could take 2 of is the emerald stack, because that has 4 or more in it. And this requirement, by the way, that there needs to be at least 4 gems of a color in a stack for you to be allowed to take 2 gems from that stack, is the same regardless of the number of players. So it's kind of interesting in a higher player count game. Of course, you have more people taking gems, but with 7 gems in each stack, that does give some more flexibility for being able to take 2 from the same stack. Okay, so the third thing that you can do, I can't demonstrate right now, but I'll do my best to demonstrate it next turn. For now, I'll just take 1 more gem of each color. Okay, so you might be wondering, okay, well, everyone's taking all these gems. Why? And as you can see, the opponent here did. The reason that you collect gems is to purchase cards. So that is the third thing that you can do, which is to purchase a card. Technically, these cards are mines, but I'm going to call them cards. So let's talk about cards. Every card has a cost, which is how many gems you have to pay in order to buy that card. So this onyx mine right here costs 3 green gems. As you can see, the bottom cards have the lowest costs, the middle cards have medium costs, and then the top cards have the highest cost. Every gem also, every card also has a gem in the upper right-hand corner. And this is, I think, a really ingenious aspect of the game's design. It might have been tempting while designing the game to make it complicated, to have some cards give more than 1 gem or other things, but no, I think that works for the game really well. every single card just has one gem shown in the upper right-hand corner. And some cards also have a number in the upper left corner. This is how many points the card is worth. The object of the game is to score the most points. There is a little bit of complexity surrounding that. I'll talk about that later. But for now, it's approximately accurate to say that, hey, just starting out, you're trying to get as many points as possible and win in the end. So, like, the bottom cards sometimes have 1 point, but usually are worth 0 points. The middle cards are worth 1, 2, or 3 points, and the top cards are always worth 3, 4, or 5 points. But it's worth noting that a card's impact once you own it is exactly the same regardless of how many points that card is worth. So, for example, this emerald mine down here, which is worth 0 points, is exactly the same, like mechanically, as one of these two emerald mines, which are worth 3 points and 4 points. So the functionality of the card, apart from its victory points, is identical, regardless of how many points it's worth. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and buy this onyx mine, and I'm going to pay 3 green gems to do so. Okay, now once you buy a mine, and this is kind of like the core of the game, you now essentially have one of that gem to use every single turn. You don't, like, collect it from the supply, but you just have it. If you don't use it, oh well. But you have it, and you could potentially use it at certain times. So, for example, if I were to purchase this mine right here, normally that would cost 2 white gems, a green one, a blue one, and a black one. But because I have a black mine indicated in the app by this rectangle around the 1 here, I would actually only have to pay 2 diamond mines, or 2 diamonds, 1 emerald, and 1 sapphire. I would not have to pay a black chip because the black mine that I have provides this one. And there's no limit to how many you have. So if I had, like, 6 green mines, that would cover the 6 from this card. So that's kind of how you can build up to the top cards, is by collecting a bunch of mines from the lower levels, which substantially reduce the costs of the more expensive mines. Do note, though, just as a matter of curiosity, there are a variety of strategies for winning. A lot of people, when they first play the game, typically try to, like, get a bunch of the cheap mines and then build up to the higher ones. But it's actually possible in some cases to win simply by going for the higher cost ones straight away. So it's what makes this game so good, is the fact that the strategy that's required to win is quite varied. Now here, I can't buy any mines, but I am going to illustrate the 4th thing you can do on your turn, which is to reserve a card. When you reserve a card, you don't take any gems from the stack. You actually take the card itself and add it to your, like, hand, and you can only have 3 cards reserved at a time. So if you already have 3 cards reserved, you cannot take the reserve cards action. In addition, you also get one of these gold tokens. Now, the gold tokens are wild. They can be used as a substitute for any one of the 5 different colors of gems. There are only 5 of them, so they are limited, just like the other gems are. If you are reserving a card and the gold stack is out, you can still reserve the card. You just don't get a gold token when you do that. So now, I still can't actually make this mine, but I will go ahead. Actually, no, I'll do this. I'll make this one. So this mine costs 3 rubies. I've got 2. I'll use my 2 rubies and the gold token to build this mine, which is, by the way, a terrible play, but just to illustrate how that works, there you go. Now, there's one rule that I have not mentioned yet, which is that at the end of your turn, if you have more than 10 gems, not cards, but actual physical discs, gems, in your hand, then you have to discard down to 10. This makes it difficult to hoard gems, and it's a very interesting interplay in the game because on the one hand, these gems are limited, so as players hoard them, it becomes sometimes very difficult to get the ones that you need to buy the cards that you want. But on the other hand, you can't hoard too much because once you get up to 10, you can't basically take any more gems, so you're going to have to start spending some of your gems, putting them back in the supply, and giving your opponents the chance to pick up gems of that type again. Let me go ahead and just illustrate, like, this card, for example. Notice it costs a green, black, white, and blue. I have a green and a black, so all I'd have to do is spend my white and blue to buy this, because I already essentially have the green and black costs covered. And there it goes. Now I have a red one. So now the cost of every card I buy for the rest of the game is reduced by 1 black, reduced by 1 red, and reduced by 1 green. So as you buy more and more cards, you get the ability to purchase more and more other cards more easily. It's a very satisfying game because there's a very strong sense of escalation as you go through it. Now let's talk about some of the other rules here. So I mentioned there's a little bit of trickiness surrounding the ending of the game. The way it works is that once a player reaches 15 points, the end of the game is triggered. And what that means is that you play to the end of the round, and at the end of the round, whoever has the most points wins. So what exactly is the end of the round? Well, it's important to remember who the first player was. In the app, it's shown by this little token here. In your physical game, you'd have to, showcase it by some other means. So this guy was the first player. What that means is that if I trigger the end of the game as the fourth player by hitting 15 points, boom, the game is over. But if this guy triggers the end of the game, then the second player, the third player, and I would each get one more turn, and only then we'd see who has the most points, and therefore who wins the game. So that's why you have to remember who the first player was. The first player does have an advantage because they usually get the first crack at the early mines, but at the same time, the players later in the lineup may potentially get an extra turn at the end after the victory condition of 15 points is triggered, and they might actually catch up and overtake the first player. In addition, there are noble cards. There's actually more than just these. I don't know how many actually in the game, but there's some number that's more than 5. And you deal out a number, either 3, 4, or 5, depending on the number of players, at random at the beginning of the game. And basically what they do is if at any point you possess a number of cards, as indicated on the noble, you collect that noble at the end of your turn. So for example, if at the end of your turn, it turns out like, hey, I have 4 diamond mines and 4 onyx mines, then you just take this noble, and this noble is simply worth 3 points. If you qualify for more than one noble at the same time, so for example, if you have 4 black ones and 4 blue ones, and then you build your 4th white one, you now qualify for both of these. You only can take 1 noble at the end of your turn. So you qualify for both of them, but you just take 1. If, however, by the time your next turn ends, none of your opponents have claimed the other one, you can claim the other one too. So that adds an extra layer of strategy because these are another source of points. So you have to decide a few things. One is, do I build up the cheap mines and then the middle mines and then the top mines, or do I kind of go for the middle mines first and the top mines, or do I go for like the top mines right away? So there's like some decisions to be made there. And then the other thing is, do I go for nobles or do I just go for raw points from cards? Typically having many different types of mines makes it harder to get the more expensive cards, but you may get some nobles as compensation. So there's a lot to keep track of. Okay, so that's pretty much all the rules. If I forgot something or if you have any questions, please ask. I'd be delighted to help you out. But otherwise, I'll do a few games against the AI and maybe a live game against people just to kind of show you how the gameplay works. It's a game I enjoy quite a bit, even if I'm not the greatest at it. And I hope to see you again soon. Take care.